At their father's funeral. Grief was still settling when Alex heard the chilling laugh of his half-brother, Grant. "She's rich now," Grant whispered with a smirk, nodding toward their stepmother, Lorraine, a woman Alex never trusted. To everyone else, it was a sad day. To Grant and Lorraine, it was payday. But Alex knew something they didn't. As executor of their late father's will, Alex held a secret clause written in ink and bitterness, a clause that could strip Lorraine of every dollar she believed was hers. The clause was hidden in a sealed addendum, one that had never been opened. Until now. What unfolds next is a layered tale of betrayal, family secrets, old grudges, and a legal trap set by a dying man who knew his wife far too well. When Alex reveals the clause, it detonates a chain reaction of lies, courtroom showdowns, and emotional reckonings that no one in the family is prepared for. In this gripping domestic drama, justice isn't just about money, it's about loyalty, legacy, and the price of silence. The chapel smelled of lilies and old wood. Mourners shifted uncomfortably in their pews, dabbing at eyes or pretending to. A priest muttered solemn words about eternal rest, while Alex stared at the polished mahogany coffin where his father lay still, finally silent. He should have felt something: loss, sadness, regret. But all Alex felt was suspicion. His eyes drifted across the room, over stiff suits and tear-streaked cheeks, until they landed on her, impeccably dressed in a black dress that clung too tightly to mourning etiquette. She stood beside Grant, her stepson and ally. Her hand rested lightly on Grant's arm, like they shared a private joke. Then Grant laughed, a quick, breathy chuckle, nearly swallowed by the organ's drone. But Alex heard it. Sharp and venomly, he turned, his stomach already twisting. "She's rich now," Grant murmured, not realizing Alex was near enough to hear. The words echoed louder than the priest's eulogy. Alex's jaw clenched. He should have expected this. Grant never cared about their father. Neither did Lorraine. No matter how many tears she dabbed with that expensive handkerchief, Lorraine married Harold Morrison for stability, for his last name, for what she thought would be her key to a lifelong fortune. But she had no idea. 3 weeks before his death, Harold had summoned Alex to the house alone. Frail and lucid, his father handed him a sealed envelope and said only, "Open it when they start smiling too soon." Alex hadn't opened it. Not until this morning. Inside was an amendment to the will. A single-page clause, notarized and legally binding. It stated that Lorraine would inherit nothing unless she remained uninformed of this clause before the reading of the will. If she caught wind of it early, it would trigger a full forfeiture of her inheritance. Alex didn't understand at first. Why the secrecy? Why this trap? But watching Grant now, smiling at his father's funeral like the check had already cleared, Alex knew. This was never about grief. This was about winning, and they thought they'd won. The service ended. People filed past the coffin, some whispering condolences, others avoiding eye contact altogether. Lorraine clutched her pearls and accepted every tearful hug with practiced elegance. Grant approached Alex near the exit. His cologne too loud, his smile too smug. "Tough day," he said, tone dripping with mock sympathy. "You holding up, little brother?" Alex didn't answer. He just stared. Grant's eyes darted briefly, the smirk faltering. "Anyway," Grant continued, "Lorraine's heading back to the estate. You should come. She wants to talk. Family matters." Alex looked past him, toward the limousine where Lorraine already waited. She caught his eye and offered a small, knowing nod, like she'd already claimed what was hers. Alex smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said. "I'll be there. We've got things to settle." As he walked toward his car, hand in his coat pocket, fingers brushing the envelope once more, he made a decision. He would read the will exactly as written. Let Lorraine believe her name was etched in gold. Let Grant fantasize about new cars and investments, then, at just the right moment, Alex would pull the ground out from under them. This wasn't just about money. It was about the truth, about the games their father had played, and the ones he taught Alex to finish. But for now, he would wait. Let them celebrate in whispers. Let them laugh, because next time they did, it wouldn't be at his father's funeral. It would be at their own undoing. The Morrison estate had never looked more alive. As if mourning required fresh orchids, glowing chandeliers, and a bartender serving champagne on silver trays. Lorraine always believed grief should be dignified and, if possible, tastefully catered. Alex stepped into the marble foyer and paused. The laughter was subtle but constant, coming from the parlor where Lorraine entertained a small circle of guests. each of them sipping from crystal flutes and avoiding any mention of the man whose body had only hours ago been lowered into the earth. "Darling, you came," Lorraine called out, gliding toward him with arms extended. She kissed the air near his cheek, her perfume blooming like poison. "You missed the toast," Grant insisted. "Said your father would have wanted one last round." Alex glanced toward the parlor. Grant raised his glass, eyes twinkling. "To Harold," he called out, "who left behind a beautiful legacy." A few people chuckled. Alex didn't. Lorraine linked her arm with his. "I know it's hard," she said in a tone practiced for sympathy but polished for manipulation. "But we must move forward." That's what Harold would have wanted. He wondered how often she rehearsed that line, probably in front of the mirror, while applying her perfect lipstick. They moved to the study, a rich room with heavy drapes and darker secrets. Lorraine sat on the edge of a leather chair, crossing her legs with choreographed grace. "So," she began, "you've spoken with the estate lawyer." Alex nodded. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., wonderful." Her eyes lit with restrained glee. "You'll read the will publicly, yes?" Harold insisted on transparency. "That's the plan," he said, studying her reaction. She smiled. "Not the polite kind. The kind that assumes victory is already in motion." Alex's fingers itched to pull the envelope from his coat and drop it on the table like a grenade. "But, not yet." Grant entered then, holding 2 glasses. He handed one to Lorraine and raised the other toward Alex. "2 new beginnings," he said. Alex didn't drink, he simply watched. Grant was too comfortable, too relaxed. That meant one thing. He was sure Lorraine was walking away with everything, and maybe she would have IVF, not for the clause. They spent the next hour talking logistics. Lorraine asked about the property titles, the trust accounts, the vineyard. In Napa she never once visited but now referred to as my investment. Alex answered with measured indifference. He let her fantasize, let her dream. When he finally left, night had fallen. The wind was sharp, and he pulled his coat tighter. In the driveway, he found Grant leaning against his car, arms crossed, that smirk never far. "You're playing it cool," Grant said. "I respect that. But just so you know, she's not giving up a cent. Not for you, not for anyone." Alex met his gaze. "She won't have to," he said. "It's not about what she gives up, it's about what she never actually had." Grant frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Alex smiled faintly. "You'll find out tomorrow." He drove away with the envelope beside him on the passenger seat, its weight growing heavier with every mile. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table, reading and rereading the clause. The language was airtight. Lorraine would only inherit if she remained completely unaware of the amendment before the will was read. Any hint that she knew Evan, a slip would nullify her share. Alex's plan had to be flawless. He couldn't tip his hand too soon. But he needed leverage. Proof she suspected nothing. Something in writing. At 3 a.m., he opened his laptop and typed a message. "Lorraine, just confirming you'll be at the reading tomorrow. I want to make sure everything is clear." She replied within minutes. "Of course, dear, I wouldn't miss it for the world." He stared at her words, rereading them like a confession. She had no idea. Tomorrow, she'd sit in a room filled with family, lawyers, and champagne hangovers, expecting to be crowned queen of the estate. And tomorrow, Alex would read the will, exactly as written up, to the final clause. The trap was set, and Lorraine was already in it. The conference room inside Carter and Lowell LLP was cold, lit by overhead fluorescents that made everything look more sterile than solemn. Long windows offered a view of the city skyline, but no one was looking out. Everyone's eyes were on the table, or rather, what sat at the center of it. Harold Morrison's last will and testament. Lorraine arrived dressed in pearls and confidence. She greeted the estate lawyer, Mr. Simons, with the warm familiarity of someone expecting excellent news. Grant trailed behind, less composed, his usual smirk replaced by an edge of restlessness. Alex was already seated at the far end, hands folded, the sealed envelope resting quietly in front of him. Mr. Simons cleared his throat and began. "As per Mr. Morrison's instructions, this will is to be read aloud in full, with all primary beneficiaries present." Alex watched Lorraine's expression. She barely blinked. She already believed. She knew what was coming. She'd likely read the last known version of the will years ago, when Harold was still healthy and still pretending to love her. Mr. Simons continued. "To my beloved stepson, Grant, I leave my collection of vintage watches and my father's war medals, as a token of our time together." Grant blinked. That's it. Mr. Simons nodded. That's what Mr. Morrison specified. Grant looked over at Lorraine, baffled. Her expression didn't change. She clearly hadn't expected Harold to be generous with his son, either. To my dear wife, Lorraine, Simons read. I leave the estate on Waverly Drive, the remaining balance of all liquid accounts held in my name, the vineyards in Napa County, and full rights to my business holdings, provided she fulfills the stipulations outlined in Addendum C. Lorraine straightened in her seat. Lips parting in a breath she thought she'd been holding for dramatic effect. Mr. Simons paused. Addendum C was given directly to Mr. Alexander Morrison, as per Harold's written instruction. Alex, do you have the sealed copy? Alex slid the envelope across the table. Unopened, as instructed. Simons sliced the envelope with a brass letter opener, eyes scanning the page with the precision of a man trained to interpret language like law and silence like guilt. He frowned. What? Lorraine asked, her voice already brittle. Simons cleared his throat again, slower this time. Addendum C states that Mrs. Lorraine Morrison shall receive the aforementioned inheritance only if, by the time of this reading, she has not been made aware directly or indirectly of the existence of this clause. Silence cracked through the room. That's absurd, Grant barked, standing up. You're telling us she loses everything? If she knew about the clause. That makes no sense. Alex leaned forward. Dad always said, true character is who you are when you think no one's watching. Lorraine's voice was sharp now. This is outrageous. I was never told of any clause. Simons nodded. Then you have nothing to worry about. But, per Mr. Morrison's instructions, we must now verify and record whether or not any communication occurred between you and Mr. Alexander Morrison that would imply knowledge of Addendum C. Alex opened his laptop, turned it to face the room, and played the screen recording. Lorraine's email reply lit up the display. Of course, dear. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Simons read it aloud. Grant's face drained. Lorraine's hands tightened in her lap. That proves nothing, she said. It's just a polite reply. He said nothing about an addendum. Simons nodded. And yet, your tone implies you were aware something additional might be presented. That alone introduces doubt. And in legal terms, doubt invalidates the clause's protection. She stood up so suddenly, her chair scraped the floor. This is manipulation? Harold was dying. He wasn't in his right mind. Alex finally spoke, his voice low but cutting. He was clear-headed enough to write this clause, hire a lawyer to witness it, and trust me to hold it until now. She stared at him, fury slowly replacing shock. You planned this? No, Alex said. He did. I just delivered the message. Grant muttered something under his breath. Lorraine spun toward him. Say it. You told me he left everything to you, Grant said. You swore. You made me laugh in front of his casket. Alex stood. And that laugh cost you everything. Simons placed the will back into his folder. As of this moment, per Addendum C, the estate reverts to the alternate beneficiary. Grant's eyes narrowed. Alternate. Alex met their gaze evenly. Me? Lorraine's voice cracked. He hated what you became. And yet Alex said, he still trusted me more than he ever trusted you. Outside, the city moved on. Unaware of the quiet implosion happening behind a pane of glass, but inside that room, everything changed. Lorraine didn't speak for the first hour after the will reading. Not in the car, not on the drive back to the estate, not when Grant slammed the door behind them and started pacing. She sat in the drawing room, one hand curled around a glass of untouched wine, the other gripping the armrest like it could anchor her to the life slipping through her fingers. Grant was the first to break. There has to be something we can do. Challenge it? Call a new lawyer. That old man Simons. He looked confused half the time. Lorraine didn't move. Grant kept going, frustration now running hot. It's a setup. Your email didn't prove anything. It didn't mention the clause, didn't name the will. You were blindsided. We can argue coercion. Fraud. Lorraine finally looked up. Her eyes, once steady and rehearsed, now flickered. Not fear, something colder. Harold always said he would never leave me vulnerable, she murmured. He promised. Grant scoffed. Well, maybe he lied, or maybe you underestimated your stepson. She set the glass down without drinking. I underestimated Harold. The room went still. I thought I could manage him, she said. I thought I knew where his lines were, but I should have known. Men like him don't trust twice. Once I took that loyalty from him, I was always on borrowed time. Grant stopped pacing. What are you talking about? She looked at him. Your father. The real one. You think Harold raised you out of love? Grant's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Lorraine stood, slow and deliberate. When I met Harold, I was already pregnant. I told him the baby was his. He married me before the due date. Grant stared at her. Are you saying I'm saying you were my insurance, she said. And I've been paying the premiums every day since. Silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. Grant looked like a man who'd just been handed the wrong life. I gave up everything, Lorraine continued, dignity, truth, even love. And I did it to secure something permanent. Something untouchable. She stepped toward the fireplace, where a portrait of Harold hung above the mantel. She stared at it with something between contempt and reverence. But, he outplayed me, she whispered. He died, and he still won. Grant dropped into a chair, the weight of revelation collapsing his posture. So what now? We just walk away. Lorraine turned to him, eyes sharp again. No, we don't walk away. We dig. Dig what? Everything Alex has touched. Every account, every transfer, every document. I want to know if he ever broke protocol, ever made a mistake. If there's even one inconsistency in that will, we open a case for forgery or manipulation. Grant was shaking his head. That'll take time. Money. You still have my trust fund, and I still have contacts. He frowned. You said, you cut ties with them years ago. She gave a tight smile. I said I stopped needing them. Not that they stopped owing me. Meanwhile, across the city, Alex sat in his father's study, now his, surrounded by a lifetime of books and locked drawers. He hadn't touched anything yet. He wanted the house to feel like Harold for a little longer. But he wasn't naive. Lorraine wouldn't go quietly. She would press, manipulate, charm, blackmail. And Grant. He'd follow her, not because of loyalty, but because he didn't know how to exist without a woman telling him where the money was. Alex opened the bottom drawer of Harold's desk and found a leather-bound journal, dated and initialed in careful script. Inside were handwritten entries, some no longer than a paragraph, some several pages deep. In one entry, Harold wrote, "She lies without blinking. I sometimes think she believes her own stories, but I have eyes. I saw the way she looked at the letters from that man in Chicago, the same man whose son looks nothing like me." Alex's throat tightened. Another entry, if anything happens to me. And the clause is ever questioned. Tell Simons to request the surveillance footage from the Vineyards office July 14, 2017. That was the day she threatened me, just not with words. Alex marked the page. This wasn't over. Lorraine had played the long game. But Harold had been playing 2-0 from a different angle. The war had only just begun. The will was just the first battle, and the next move was Lorraine's. The footage was grainy. Shot from a corner camera in the Vineyard's main office. It showed Harold, seated behind his desk, a glass of scotch in hand, and Lorraine standing before him, rigid as a blade. No sound, just movement. But you didn't need audio to understand the tone. Alex watched the July 14th recording in silence. Lorraine's posture was tense, her gestures sharp. She leaned in at one point, both hands on the desk, close enough to Harold's face that he flinched. Then came the moment she reached into her purse, pulled out a manila envelope, and placed it firmly on the desk. Harold looked at it, then at her. His expression darkened. He pushed the envelope aside without opening it. Lorraine didn't move. She just stood there, watching him, daring him to respond. Then she turned and left. Harold sat there for nearly 5 minutes unmoving. Alex paused the video and zoomed in on the envelope. The corner had a faint logo, a legal firm in Chicago. One Alex recognized from an earlier investigation Harold had launched privately, years ago. He made a note. That firm specialized in family law and paternity testing. He picked up his phone and called Mr. Simons. I need a copy of everything Harold filed with that Chicago firm. All confidential correspondences, whether related to the will or not. Simons hesitated. Alex, some of those documents were never included in the estate's public file. Are you sure? I'm not asking for permission. He hung up back at Lorraine's estate now, technically. Alex Ashay was moving through the rooms like a ghost in a house that refused to acknowledge her. Grant sat in the breakfast nook, surrounded by folders and crumpled notes. No trust, funds left, he muttered. No access to the accounts. Alex froze everything. Lorraine didn't respond. She was staring out the window at the back garden where Harold once hosted charity brunches. Where she once stood beside him, wearing a borrowed smile and a dress worth more than most of the guests' cars. "You're not helping," Grant snapped. "You're just walking around like the ghost of bad decisions." She turned slowly. "Do you think he would have married me if I hadn't been pregnant?" Grant blinked. "What?" "He knew," she said. "Not then, but later. I think he always suspected. That's why he kept us so close and so far at the same time. He didn't hate you. But he never really loved you either." Grant recoiled. "Why are you saying this now?" "Because," she said, stepping closer, "if we're going to burn Alex down, you need to know the kind of fire we're playing with. Harold wasn't a man. He was an institution. The kind of man who writes traps into legal documents and dares you to find them. And Alex. He's his heir, in more than name." Grant shook his head. "Then what's the play?" Lorraine smiled. Thinly, "We don't fight the estate, we fight Alex. Personally, publicly." "You mean I mean scandal?" "I mean digging into every year he disappeared from the family. Find who he slept with, who he paid off, who he hurt. We paint him as unstable, dangerous, unfit. And how does that help us? We claim Harold was manipulated in his final months. That Alex coerced him, isolated him, took control while he was mentally declining. If we win that argument, we challenge the entire will." Grant stared. "That's actually smart." "I'm not finished," she said. "We start leaking rumors. We use social pressure. If Alex starts losing his reputation, he'll have to defend it. That's when we find the cracks." "Do you think he's hiding something?" "Oh, everyone is. The question is what he's willing to lose to keep it buried." That same evening, Alex received an anonymous envelope in his mailbox. No return address. Inside were 6 photos, each one showing him at different points over the last 5 years. One at a hotel bar with a woman. One at a protest. One stepping out of a clinic. One on a dark street, blood on his knuckles, all taken without his knowledge. A note was paperclipped to the top. "We all have pasts. Yours is about to go public." Alex read the note 3 times, then burned it in the fireplace. The war wasn't coming. It had already begun. And Lorraine had just fired her first shot. The article hit just before sunrise. It wasn't on a major platform yet, but it was loud enough. A mid-tier online outlet, specializing in exposes and exclusive tips, published a story titled, "The Forgotten Son, How Alex Morrison Seized Power from a Dying Man." It featured grainy photos, selective timelines, and cherry-picked quotes from anonymous sources. Among them, a former college roommate, who vaguely recalled Alex's violent streak. A bar manager from Reno claiming Alex threatened a customer. And a photo of him in front of a free legal clinic with the caption, "Seeking help, or hiding something." Alex read the article in full, without blinking. He recognized every moment. The bar incident. He'd broken up a fight and ended up bleeding. The protest. It was peaceful, until someone turned it violent. The woman at the hotel bar. A journalist friend who was interviewing him off the record. But none of that would matter once the narrative took root. Mr. Simons called before 8 a.m. "Alex, this is escalating fast. I've had 2 reporters call the firm. One even asked if Harold had dementia during the signing." Alex nodded to himself. "So that's their move. Should we issue a public statement?" "No," Alex said. "Not yet. Let her think she's winning." He hung up and sat in Harold's chair. It was the first time he realized how comfortable it felt. How natural. Downstairs, the front doorbell rang. He answered to find an envelope taped to the door. Inside, a single photograph. Lorraine, sitting beside Harold's hospital bed, holding his hand on the back. A handwritten message. "Don't rewrite history. Alex, he still held my hand when he was dying." The audacity of it made him laugh. Lorraine wasn't just rewriting history, she was publishing it, and she wasn't doing it alone. That evening, Alex drove to a small house outside of town. A woman answered the door at late 40s, sharp eyes, long memory. "Marina," he said. She stepped aside, letting him in without a word. Marina used to be Harold's private nurse during his last months. She had resigned abruptly 2 weeks before his death. No explanation, no statement. "Until now, they offered me money," she said, pouring coffee into chipped mugs. "Who?" "Her, Lorraine. She said it was just to keep things peaceful. Said you'd make a mess if I talked." "What, did she want you to hide?" Marina hesitated. Then she pulled a flash drive from her coat pocket and handed it over. "I recorded everything," she said. He wanted me to. Alex blinked. You recorded my father. He asked me to. Every night he'd say, I'm not going quietly, not after what she did. He'd talk for hours. Confessions, thoughts, sometimes just anger. I kept the files. I don't know why. Maybe I was waiting to see what kind of man you'd become. Alex gripped the drive. And you didn't disappoint him. He drove home with trembling fingers. Inserted the drive into his laptop. There were over 200 audio files. He clicked on the latest one, dated 4 days before Harold's death. Her voice came first. I'm the reason your company didn't implode in '08. I kept investors happy. I kept your name clean. Harold coughed. Then, you kept your own secrets clean. I could have destroyed you. You still might. That's why I'm leaving the truth behind. Alex paused the recording. Closed his eyes. Lorraine wasn't just playing defense. She was hiding preemptively. And now, for the first time, he had something real, tangible, evidence. Back at Lorraine's temporary residence, a hotel suite, covered in orchid arrangements and chaos. Grant watched the numbers. We're trending, he said. You're all over the gossip blogs. His credibility's crashing. Lorraine nodded, staring at her reflection in the mirror. And what's the public saying? That he's cold, calculating, like he pushed Harold out. She smiled. Good, but there's pushback, Grant added. Some people are defending him, saying you were never seen grieving. Some are even asking why you didn't contest the will sooner. Lorraine picked up her phone and scrolled. Her eyes caught on a comment. If she really loved Harold, why did she leave the hospital 2 hours before he died and never return? She didn't flinch, but she felt the bruise. Then we hit harder, she said. Find the weakest link. Someone in his camp who's not clean. Grant hesitated. Like who? Simons. He's old. See if he's ever made a mistake. Or that nurse, what was her name? Marina. Grant scribbled notes. Lorraine stood and tightened the belt on her silk robe. If they want a war, we'll give them one. But this time, we bring fire. Across town, Alex clicked on the next recording, and the next. And the next. Each one was a window into Harold's mind. His regrets, his fury, his suspicions. Then came the entry that made Alex stop breathing. She threatened me once, not with violence, with truth. Said if I ever cut her off, she'd tell Grant. Tell him everything. About who he is. About who he isn't. Alex's hands trembled. Harold's voice, weak but sharp, came through one last time. I never told him, but maybe I should've. Grant hadn't answered his phone in 12 hours. Lorraine tried twice before noon. Once at breakfast, again in the car, and finally gave up. She assumed he was sulking. He'd always needed time to process things, especially when reality didn't match his expectations. But by evening, her calls went straight to voicemail. No text, no reply, no sign. When she returned to the suite, the envelope was waiting on the coffee table. Unmarked, hand-delivered inside, a single sheet of paper, printed in plain font. He knows. There was no signature. Her chest tightened. She called Grant again. Still nothing. Across the city, Grant sat alone in the back booth of a cheap diner, untouched coffee in front of him, Harold's journal in hand. It had arrived that morning. No note, just a package with a leather-bound book and a yellow tab marking a specific page. His name was underlined. He'd read it 4 times already, but each time the words hit harder. I knew the moment I saw him. He wasn't mine. The math didn't work. The dates didn't match, but I raised him anyway. I thought I could love him enough to forget, but Lorraine reminded me every chance she could, not with words, with silence, with avoidance, with contempt. Grant stared at the page until the letters blurred. He flipped back to earlier entries. Notes about Lorraine's lies. About her manipulating Harold during the worst months of his illness. About the Chicago lawyer who sent the results Harold never showed anyone. Grant stood, shoved the journal into his backpack, and left. That night, Alex was waiting on the back terrace of the estate. He saw Grant's car before it even turned the corner. No smirk this time. No swagger. Grant parked and walked straight up to him. Did you know? He asked. Alex nodded. Not for sure, but I suspected. Grant took a deep breath. Why didn't he tell me? Because you were a kid. And then you weren't. And by then, he didn't know how. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to feel what it's like to win for once. Even if it was temporary. Grant's eyes narrowed. Is this your way of saying I'm not family? No, Alex said. It's my way of saying I know exactly what it's like to be raised in someone's house and still feel like a visitor. Silence stretched between them, heavy, not hostile, just real. I don't want her to win, Grant said. Alex looked at him. Then stop helping her. I already did. He reached into his bag and pulled out a USB drive. Everything she's been planning. Recordings, emails, her plan to smear the will. She keeps everything on her laptop, and she's terrible with passwords. Alex took the drive. You're not doing this for me, he said. You're doing it for Harold. Grant shook his head. No, I'm doing it for myself. I spent my whole life being used. I want to know what it feels like to choose my side. Lorraine, meanwhile, sensed the shift. She always did. When she returned to her suite and found Grant's room empty, his bags gone, she knew something had cracked. When she opened her laptop and saw her desktop reorganized, files moved, items missing, her breath caught. She grabbed her phone and called her lawyer. I want an injunction against Alex Morrison. I want a cease and desist against every media outlet that mentioned me. I want full surveillance on anyone tied to the estate. The lawyer was calm. To calm Lorraine, he said, there's a problem. What now? Alex has filed for a petition to unseal your prenup. She froze. He claims coercion. Says Harold had begun writing a statement before his death that challenges the legitimacy of your marriage, citing fraud. That's absurd. The prenup was airtight. Not if it was signed under false pretenses. Especially if Harold had doubts about paternity and financial deceit during the marriage. She dropped the phone. That night, she dreamed of the vineyard, of July 14th, of the conversation she thought no one heard. In the dream, Harold wasn't weak. He stood tall, younger, sharper. His voice was clear. You thought I wouldn't find out, he said. But I always knew. She woke up with a scream caught in her throat. Somewhere across the city, Alex loaded the USB drive into his laptop. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just listened. One of Loren's voice memos echoed into the room. If he ever leaves me out, I'll destroy everything. I'll make Grant hate him. I'll twist the will so hard, no one will know what's true. I've done worse. Alex clicked pause. Tomorrow. It would all go public. The media storm hit just after 9 a.m., not from a press release. Not from a journalist, not even from Alex. It came from a leak. An anonymous profile uploaded Lorraine's voice memos, select clips from Harold's recordings, and one pivotal document, a scanned copy of Addendum C, signed and notarized, with Harold's handwritten note attached. If you're reading this, she tried to lie her way into the ground with me. Within hours, the internet erupted. Blogs picked it up first. Then the legal forums. Then the gossip sites. Headlines clashed, some defending Lorraine as a targeted widow, others calling her a schemer exposed. But what turned the tide wasn't the claws, it was the recordings. Harold's voice, old and rasping, filled phones and earbuds, everywhere. He didn't accuse Lorraine, he described her, piece by piece. The way she smiled at cameras, the way she never visited the vineyard until he got sick, the way she once stood over his hospital bed and whispered, "When you die, I'll finally breathe." The public turned. Fast, ruthless. Alex didn't watch it unfold. He stayed in the study, the USB drive unplugged, the audio files backed up. The war was over. Not because Lorraine was defeated, but because the one thing she had built her life on perception had shattered. Grant arrived mid-afternoon. He looked like someone who had slept too little and grown up too fast. It's done, he said. She won't speak to anyone. Her lawyer dropped her this morning. She tried to book a flight to Switzerland. Interpol flagged it because of the prenup case. Alex nodded. Did she know it was you? I didn't hide it. I even sent her a thank you note. Signed it, "The son you never earned." They sat in silence for a moment. Do you hate her? Grant finally asked. Alex thought about it. The lies, the manipulation, the way she weaponized grief and trust and a child's need to belong. No, he said. I pity her. That's worse. Later that evening, Mr. Simons called. Harold's personal letter to you was located in a secondary safety deposit box. It was marked only open if she fights. I assume that qualifies. Alex drove to the firm and opened the letter in the dim light of Simons's office. It was handwritten, shaky but legible. Son. I spent too long trying to fix what wasn't mine to repair. I married her because I thought giving a broken woman's safety would make her whole. But people like Lorraine don't want homes. They want castles they didn't build. You were my only clean decision. You stayed when you didn't have to. You protected me when I was too proud to admit I needed it. You saw through her without letting it poison you. That's strength. I never said this enough. You're the only one I trust with my name. And if this clause ever gets used, let it be known, she wasn't written out of my will. She wrote herself out, with every lie she told. You carry my legacy now. Don't let it end with revenge. Let it begin with truth. Daedalus folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. His hands didn't tremble. His breath was steady. For the first time in years, he felt something solid beneath him. Not victory. Not vengeance. Closure. Lorraine didn't disappear entirely. She tried once more to regain public sympathy with a pre-recorded interview, but no one aired it. Her voice had become a ghost, her name a cautionary tale. The estate remained quiet. The vineyard blossomed. Harold's ashes, which Lorraine had refused to claim, were buried beneath a new oak planted near the eastern slope. Alex visited it once a month, not out of duty, but out of rhythm. He'd sit by the tree, let the wind pass, and speak nothing aloud. The past had taken up enough space. Grant moved to Oregon, started working in a non-profit for fatherless kids. The irony wasn't lost on him, and the will, the infamous will, was now part of legal case studies taught in law schools, a masterclass in preemptive defense. But to Alex, it was never about the law. It was about knowing that sometimes, the only real inheritance worth claiming is freedom from the people who tried to buy your silence.